Hi folks, welcome to another practice session. We're going to be spending some time on the brush knees again. So let's start just getting warmed up with the bear. Just nice and easy. Turning back and forth. Try to get the shift from one leg to the other to be instantaneous. So I'm turning towards the left, and then right away I change to the bottom of my right foot, and the whole turn happens relative to the bottom of the right foot. I change to the bottom of the left foot, the whole turn happens. So it's like you're drawing a line from the rear crown of your head down to the bubbling well of one foot, and then you change to the other foot. And then you change to one foot. So even as the weight takes time to shift from one leg to the other, the leg that you're using changes in an instant. So really try to get that feeling. The whole turn happens around one leg, and the whole turn is in one direction. And then you go to the other foot, and the whole turn happens in the other direction. You change the whole turn, versus gradually shifting and continuing to turn, and then turning part of the way. Gradually shifting and continuing to turn, turning part of the way. You get to the extreme of the turn, you change feet, and you do the entire turn off of that new foot. Change feet. The entire turn happens around the axis that goes from the top of the head to one bubbling well. And the bottom of that axis changes in the blink of an eye at the speed of thought. So really try to get that. This is part of separate, empty, and full. I might say separate emptying and filling to make it clearer. So you separate the leg that is emptying from the leg that is filling. One of them has your root, and that root changes in an instant. One foot to the other foot. One foot to the other foot. And try to find the cross-balance line. As soon as I connect to the bottom of one foot, I'm connecting to the heart of the opposite palm all the way through the turn. And then change to the other foot and the other hand. So you've got this line that you're drawing from the rooted foot through the body to the opposite hand. And that line changes in an instant. Speed of thought. Okay, another swing or two. And great, let's do a first third. Again, to get ourselves warmed up here. Nothing agonizing or overwrought yet. We'll have plenty of time to pay attention to gory details. Just do it. And go ahead. Okay, so one of the things we've been looking at a lot while we've been working on the brush knees, and that they're just a great place to work on this is true throughout the whole form, is this notion of creating a situation or a circumstance where when you let go, something happens. And the skill is in setting the situation upright so that a release or relaxation causes the effect you want rather than some other effect. And so as we've been doing this, we've been looking at situations where you create a feeling of tautness through the body. So, for example, looking at the hero stroll. When I come up on the front leg, I'm gradually stretching and lengthening the rear leg. And there's this feeling of stretch, a dynamic stretch, a tautness through the leg that I can release. And when I do that, I let the foot step. So we got a question saying, well, wait a second, tautness, isn't that like tension? Isn't that not the same thing as relax? Relax, relax, relax. We're supposed to completely relax and let everything go. How does that fit with this dynamic tautness, with this creation of a stretch that you can let go of and have something happen? And that's a great question. And so I'll talk about this a little bit. We'll do a few review exercises just to try to really get this idea through to you. And then we'll get on with walking brush knees. So tension and tautness on a physical, mechanical level, there's no difference between them. It's not like I can look at a rope and say that rope is tense or that rope is taut. Those are synonyms in terms of Newtonian mechanics. But we're talking about two very different experiences that represent different configurations in the body, different ways of using the body. And so we tend to use the term tension to refer to muscular tension or muscular tightness. And all of us can do this. I've done this with you before. We'll do it again. If you just hold an arm out, and the arm is as soft as you can get it, all of the muscles as relaxed as possible. And then you can do an isometric contraction, and you can tighten all of the muscles in place, and the arm doesn't move. And then you can relax all of the muscles as soft as you can get them, and then you tighten them again, and the arm doesn't move, but now the muscles are hard and tight. So tension in our terminology, or tightness, refers to that muscular contraction. And when we're relaxing, when we try to embody tsung in the Tai Chi sense, you want to get rid of as much of that as possible. And the thing is, most of us carry more tension in our bodies than we're aware of, right? We all know there's opposing muscles. There's, a muscle that goes across the inside of the elbow, and there's antagonist, opposite muscles that go across the opposite. And the way that I hold my arm out without it flopping is that I've got those two muscles in balance. Most of us use more than we need for that. So when I do the isometric contraction, I'm contracting both muscles. So I'm making both of them tighter, and then I can let it go and it's softer. Most of us have a base level of tension there that's way more than the absolute minimum that's needed to keep the arm from falling, right? And in order to hold my arm out here, I have to use some muscles. If you came and, I'm Ben Lo, I'm Chung Man Cheng, I'm Yang Cheng Fu, I'm standing here and I am completely relaxed. I am embodying Sung and I'm holding my arms out in some shape. If you came and gave Yang Cheng Fu a general anesthetic, at that instant, he would fall to the floor. And the reason he would fall to the floor is that his muscles would actually go to 0, not just 3%, right? Me, I'm at like 20% to do this. I'm just making these numbers up. You're at 50% when you're doing this. Yang Cheng Fu is at 2%. But any of us, if you gave us a general anesthetic and actually took us to 0, we'd all fall to the floor. So, use no force, use no muscular effort. We're trying to get a feeling across with that rather than it being a biomechanically accurate description. We have muscles, they have a purpose, they get used. What we're trying to do is use them as efficiently as possible rather than fighting against ourselves. The isometric contraction, I'm fighting against myself. And we've done this thing of try to touch your forehead, and it's impossible. Relax the arm, touch your forehead. It's easy. We want that feeling of ease. And when you first do this, when I let go of my 20% and I try to get down to single digits, when you let go of your 40% and you try to get down to teens, it's going to feel very different than what you think of as your base resting state. And it'll feel like you're doing nothing. So this tsung, relax, this Tai Chi relaxation of doing no more than the bare minimum to position the body in the shape that you want. Right? Yang Cheng Fu is in play guitar, and it's a very specific shape. We know there has to be some use of muscles to be in that shape. If there was no muscles, Yang Cheng Fu would be a puddle on the floor. But he can do this with 1% of muscles rather than 20% of muscles. I can do this with 20% of muscles rather than the 30 or 40 that you're using. So it feels profoundly more relaxed. And when you first go from 30 to 20 or 20 to 10, it's so different, it feels like you're doing nothing. So that's relax. Nothing more than the bare minimum. And to you, it will feel like you're not doing anything. Ben used to say to us, relax, not a collapse. When you collapse, you've actually given up everything, and then you lose your shape. You fall to the floor, or you distort, right? Your habitual shapes, and you distort. So relax, not a collapse. For relax, you have to still be in the correct shape. The job of the muscles is to arrange the bones and the body to be in the shapes we want. So, there's a difference between being like this and being like this, and being like this, and it's the job of the muscles to make that difference. The problem is we all do too much. So I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and none of those are relaxed. So you've got to work this as relaxed as possible in the muscles, and that's what we're talking about with relax. Now, at the same time, there's another system that runs through the body. And that other system can have some stretching and some release. It's elastic. So like a rubber band, you can stretch it and you can let go and the rubber band comes back. We tend to refer to that system as the sinews. That's an old word for the connective tissue that comprises the tendons, ligaments, and fascia. It's too clumsy to say tendons, ligaments, and fascia every time we want to do that, so we tend to say sinews. And the sinews can either be released, like the rubber band that's just there floppy, or they can be stretched. When they're stretched, there's a tautness in the sinews. So we use the terminology tightness for the muscles, and you don't want to have that. Tautness for what happens as the sinews get stretched and then released. And you do want to be able to get some stretch into that connective tissue system that can then, that's storing potential energy in it, that you can let go of and it'll release. So we sometimes use this little prop, which we haven't used in a while, but here's my little prop. It's one of these giraffes, right? Everybody knows this toy. You let it go. And so I need another giraffe. I need a giraffe that is carved out of wood. So pretend this giraffe is carved out of wood. That giraffe doesn't move at all. You push on it and it just doesn't change. It doesn't change at all. That's the bodies we start Tai Chi with. This giraffe is alive and dynamic. I push on it and it moves, but it springs back. So it has an alive dynamicness to it that the wooden giraffe doesn't have. So you want this giraffe. This giraffe is the relaxed giraffe. But to go from the wooden giraffe to this giraffe, you have to go through this place. This place might superficially seem relaxed, but this is what Ben would call collapsed. So we want relaxed, not collapsed. In relaxed, there is this dynamic tautness that can happen here. And look what happens. If I push the giraffe, I've actually put tautness in the little giraffe's connective tissue. It's strung together with little elastic bands. And I've put tautness into the giraffe's connective tissue. When I release, the giraffe moves. So I've created the tautness, I release it, the giraffe moves. If I do that with the collapsed giraffe and I move it, when I let go, it just swings in place, nothing happens. If I push the body over, when I let go, nothing happens. It's not like the dynamic giraffe that springs back. This is what we want. I think this is what the classics mean when they talk about the very first line of the classics. In motion, the body must be Qingling, and most important, strung together. So the stringing together is the little elastic bands that run through the giraffe and create this condition where it is responsive, dynamically aware, and there's some tautness in the connective tissues running through the giraffe here. So that's what we want to get. It's really confusing. And so the progression is you start out as the giraffe of wood, and then you start melting. Right? And so now I'm the collapsed giraffe. And then from there, I can fill up and become strung together so that I'm not tight, but I'm not collapsed. I'm dynamically alive through there. So I want to spend a couple seconds on some of the exercises that help you get these distinct feelings. Because once you understand what it's like inside, once you've touched the needle in the haystack, then you'll be able to start looking at places in the form and in push hands and in sword where you use tension rather than tautness, or where everything collapses when there should be a little bit of that dynamic awareness. So one we've used a bunch here is the hero stroll. Again, we'll just do the walking bit. So just start out with this and step forward, shift underground, come up into your front leg, stretching the rear leg. So you're not pushing off with the rear leg at all, but you get that feeling of stretch, and then you release, and the foot steps. Underground, come up the new rear leg, gradually moving away from the rear leg, which peels the heel off, release and let it step. Come up. Get that feeling of stretch. The muscles in the leg should be soft, but you'll feel a distinct line that runs through the leg. That's the connective tissue. Release and let the foot swing. And once more, come up, stretch, tautness in the connective tissue, but muscles relaxed, release and step. So then there's two things you can do instead. One of them is collapse. So do that. You come forward. As you come up, let the rear leg go totally slack, limp, right? This is the naive understanding of relax. This is the collapsed over giraffe. And now when you let go, nothing happens. So what you're forced to do is engage your muscles, tightening them to move the foot. So do it on the other side. Come up, and then let the rear leg go totally limp. When you let go, nothing happens, so you have to engage muscles to move that foot, right? So that's one extreme where everything went limp and no dynamic stretch, no tautness went into the body. And so when you let go, nothing changes. You're already collapsed, right? The little giraffe, when the giraffe has already let go, it's completely limp, it lets go more, nothing happens. The only way the giraffe can actually do this is if it's got that dynamic tautness. And then the other thing that happens is you engage muscles. So you want to do something, and so you do it. And this is what Beth was working on the other night. So do this with me again. Step out and come up. Get that feeling of stretch, and now push down into the ground with your rear leg. Right? So that engaged the muscles. The muscles are no longer soft. And now when you let go, nothing, it doesn't go anywhere. The muscle's softened. It actually goes to the limp place. And again, you have to just step. So underground, up, moving away from the rear leg, push into the ground. Notice how that takes the feeling of dynamic tautness away from the leg and replaces it with a tightness. And when you let go, you go to limp. It doesn't affect the change you want. So, trying to get it right, come up, stretch, 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 stretch. Leg muscles are soft. When you let go, that can move the foot. Come up, stretch, 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 stretch. Leg muscles are soft. When you let go, the leg can swing. So we're trying to get that Goldilocks place between limp and forced. And really what happens is the muscles stay as quiet and soft as they possibly can. And we're letting the tension go, the stretch go in and out of the connective tissue. This is a difficult thing to find. So these exercises work with that. Let's look at the tiger for a second. Right, so as you're here in the tiger, you step forward, everything comes forward, the arms are rounded, the fists are on top, the rear foot comes in, and then you sink down into the rear foot, and that opens the fists, rotating the forearms. Now you've got your claws. And back. Step, everything comes forward, rounded. Sit down on the rear leg, and as you do that, it rotates the forearms and opens the claws. Okay, so that's the thing. Now you can do this both ways too. You can, and so do this with me, let's go limp first. You come forward and you sit back and you open your claws and everything is all limp. Forward, sit back, limp. So that's one extreme. The other extreme is that you do like external martial arts, tiger claw, and that makes you have tension through it. So step forward and tiger claw, tight, tight, tension in the muscles. Step forward, tiger claw, tight, tight, tension in the muscles. We want the third way, where the muscles stay soft, but as you sink, that sends something out that gives you that dynamic stretch, that dynamic aliveness in the connective tissue. So you're going to feel it as this happens. As you come forward and you sink down, you're going to feel a dropping that'll run across the body and then out through the arms all the way to the hands. So try the tiger a couple times. Try to have the rotation of the arms and the making of the claw shape not be something you do, but something that's like pulled, like it pulls down here, and the bands, oh, I have it in my pocket now. The bands that run through the giraffe let me move down here and cause a change all the way through the giraffe. So I change one of my bands down at the bottom, and I let that go all the way through to the hands. So try that a couple times. Stepping, the rear foot comes in, and now feel that change run through the forearms all the way out to the fingers. And back. Forward, stepping. As you sink, feel it go from the hip through the body, hip, shoulders, arms, all the way out to the fingers. And you want to still be soft, but there's an aliveness. It's not limp. A couple more times. Once more on each side, looking for the needle. Hip drops, shoulders drop. Feel the rotation go through the forearms. Weight drops into the rear foot, hip drops, shoulders drop. Rotation goes through the forearms. So the hero stroll is nice for finding that feeling in the legs. The tiger is pretty good for finding the feeling in the arms, but then in the tiger we don't do anything useful with it. We've just come through here and done this, and now we're like, okay, la-di-da, back on to the next one. In the form, we actually try to use this stuff. And so it's, as I'm doing brush knee, it's what, from here, lets the foot step and folds the arm. And from here, lets the foot step and folds the arm. So let's do brush knee a couple times, and I want you to try to find that combination of creating the stretch that then you let go of to actually have things move, as opposed to bunching, this is muscular tension, or as opposed to leaving everything limp. So just doing, we'll take it just from the start of the brush knees. Left foot forward, right hand high. Sit back. Coming forward, feel that long line and release it. And brush knee. And sit back. Coming forward, feel that long line and release it. And take a break. So we've said before, the secrets aren't in the principles. The principles right there: separate, empty, and full, separate yin and yang. Separate yin and yang doesn't mean either be completely yin or be completely yang. You're always yin and yang, but you don't want them mushy. You want the empty separated from the full, even as you're never completely full or completely empty. You're empty and full, but the empty and full are separated, distinguished, clearly distinct. So we have to do work on this. And that's not a secret. Everybody knows that principle. Tai Chi Chuan, the art of separating yin and yang, right? The secrets are the things that you do that teach you how this works. So spend time with the hero stroll, getting this to work. Spend time looking in the tiger, how it runs through the body as you're doing this. Spend time looking in the form, play guitar, stretch the rubber band, release the rubber band. The brush knees that we were just doing. Spend time working with those till you have a visceral understanding of the difference between tension, muscular tension, and tautness, stretching in the connective tissue, so that they really feel like different things to you, so that you don't confuse them, so that you understand when everything is limp, you understand when the muscles are tight, you understand when the muscles are soft, but you've got that running through the connective tissue. So that becomes a lived experience. This is not easy, so you'll spend real time on this. I think Beth will do more with the folding over of the arms and all of that. I want to look at one thing, and then I'll turn it over to her. And the one thing I want to look at is what happens as you sit back. We've gotten into the final posture, and as you sit back, you get to this diagonal ball of air place. I'm in the final posture. I sit back, and I get to diagonal ball of air. And so I'm going to look at what happens with both of the arms. I want to look at the bottom one first. And so do this with me. Start out, we'll do both sides. So you're in brush knee. As you sit back, there's like a connection between your elbow, your hip, and your elbow. And the rotation here goes through and turns the arm along with the foot. So just as, this is another instance of that dynamic tautness, as you're turning here, you want to create a slight condition of a stretch across the leg that then can be released to turn the foot. You don't just sit back and turn the foot right away, right? We've done that. That's using muscles. You won't get this thing. You sit back, slight lengthening, and then the foot turns. So the same thing happens with the arm here. As you're sitting back, connected from the hip to the elbow, and it doesn't move the elbow, what happens is as that release happens, it goes out the hand and rotates the forearm. So just try this a bunch of times, sitting back and turning, and feel the connection between the front hip and the elbow of the hand that's turning over. And now do that on the other side. Brush knee with the other side up. Connect the hip, hip to elbow. As you sit back, let that play out and turn the hand. And sit back, let that play out and turn the hand. And notice that just as the foot doesn't start moving right away, neither does the hand start rotating right away. But they all end together, and as soon as you start moving, you feel changes happening that then play out into the hand turning over. Now, the other thing that happens is you just turn your hand over, like flipping a pancake. So go back to the first leg, and as you sit back, just turn the hand. You probably move the foot at the same time too. Sit back and just turn the hand. Sit back and just turn the hand. And now try to do it where the hip is connected to the elbow, and as you sit back, that causes the hand to turn over. Sitting back, hip moves the elbow, sends a rotation out the forearm. And do it on the other side. Flip the pancake first. Sit back, flip the pancake. Sit back, flip the pancake. Sit back, flip the pancake. Now make it happen. Sit back, hip is connected to elbow. Oh, rotation runs out through the forearm. Hip is connected to elbow. Sit back, runs out through the forearm. So those two should feel pretty different to you. And one of them should feel a lot more like Tai Chi than the other. And then the other piece that I want to look at is the top hand. So when I'm here and I sit back with the top hand, I sit back and I'm moving away from the hand as everything is going. The hand rotates, right? It's here in front of me, and it rotates over, and it turns slightly. But what happens is I move my body back. The hand is still out there. The arm gets a slight stretch here. That's what makes it be the top part of the ball of air. Now, other things you could do is you can withdraw the hand. Or you can drop the hand. Those are both things that happen to people a lot. You want to leave the hand almost motionless in space while the body moves away from it. Now, I'm not actually trying to keep it totally motionless in space, but I'm not withdrawing it with me. So try that. We'll do both sides again, paying attention to the top hand. Sit back, move away from the hand, and let the palm rotate so that you've got a diagonal ball of air with the top hand high. Do that again. Sit back, move away from the hand, diagonal ball of air with the top hand high. Once more. Sit back, moving away from the hand. It's like it stays behind, and then it comes with you as you rotate. Do it on the other side. Sit back, moving away from the top hand till you get a diagonal ball of air. You leave the hand behind, you move the body away from it, diagonal ball of air. Once more. Sit back, moving the body away from the hand, diagonal ball of air. Back to the first side, let's make mistakes. Sit back, just withdraw the hand as you do that. So the hand, if anything, ends up closer to me. Right? So feel that mistake again. Sit back, bring the hand back. This should have the limp, no air in the system feeling. Leave the hand behind so you get it right. Move away. Feel that feeling. Now let the hand drop. Sit back, drop the hand. That's a fine thing to do. That's just not the way that brush knee works. So sit back, leaving the hand behind. Bottom hand rotates, diagonal ball of air. Do it on the other side. Hand high. We'll let the air out first time. Just sit back and bring the hand back with you. And do that again. Sit back, bring the hand back with you. Right? So that's limp. Leave the hand behind. Sit back, leaving the hand behind. Diagonal ball of air. Drop the hand this time. Sit back, dropping the hand. Different move. You might do that with aliveness, or you might do it with limpness, but it's a different move. Leaving the hand behind, doing it correctly. Sitting back, bottom hand rotates, front foot turns, diagonal ball of air. So the reason we do all these things where we play around with the different options of doing it is we want you to understand in yourselves, in your body, what those differences are so that you really know rather than just having this memorized. So let's do brush knee once more, and I want you to pay attention to those two things. I want you to pay attention to the rotation of the bottom arm, and I want you to pay attention to sitting back away from the top hand to get this diagonal ball of air with the top hand still pretty high. So we'll just march across the room, and then I'll turn it over to Beth. So brush knee, left foot forward, right hand high. Sit away from the top hand, rotate the bottom hand, and go. Yearning. Brush knee. Sit back, move away from the top hand, let the hip rotate the bottom hand, diagonal ball of air. Yearning. Brush knee. Again. Move away from your top hand, rotate the bottom. Move away from your top hand, rotate the bottom. Once more on each side. Okay, so Beth will answer the question of the hour of how do you actually turn those hands over and how do you get into the final posture?
So as Lee promised, we got to get to the final posture here. We could spend weeks and weeks doing all this little minutia and not actually reach the final posture. So let's get into the final posture. I'll do this facing you once just to talk about it and show, and then we can practice it some. And here's the deal. So we got ourselves to this place. Then we were working on this last week. As you shift and the yearning arm comes up, the inside hand comes down a little bit to the place that gives you that cross balance. But it doesn't drop all the way, and it doesn't just stay up. It has to be alive. So what happens is as you come to this place and it starts that compressing feeling, when you let go, everything happens at once. And it's not because you micromanage 2 hands and a foot and, oh, right, I got to turn my waist too. It's one thing, and it's that stretch and release concept that we've been working with. So you get to here. This is, everything's at its maximum tautness, if you will. And when you let go, a bunch of things happen. It's not 3 things that you do. You just let go, and you know where you're aiming to, and that helps everything else arrive where you want it to be. So I'm here, and then when I let go, the foot steps, the waist turns a little bit toward the side with the yearning hand, and the yearning hand comes in. They all happen together. The important piece here is that this hand has to go from being out that way, pointing away, to being close to the body. So it's like my center moves toward my hand as my hand moves toward my center. So I'm here, and then when I let go, there was actually a little bit more turn. And now I've got my hand right here with me. The fingers are pointing to where I want to end up. You know, a little place in space here that I'm aiming toward, not that the hand just folds over. And now it's just somewhere vaguely pointing out, and it's not really related to me. If I shift, it doesn't go anywhere. I want it to have this sense that when I land here, I am set up so that I don't have to manipulate this arm any particular way. I just shift, and it's riding with me, and turn, and it comes through. So that's the basic idea of what the folding over arm is doing. I'm just going to talk about both arms and then we can work them one in another and look at them separately. So then you got the other problem of when you come through to here, this hand has to drop. It has to drop to protect the groin. And remember, when you drop a hand to protect or even raise a hand to protect something, you need a little bit of space, but not too much. Right? If I drop this hand and it's just hanging right here, I'm not actually protecting my groin. If I were to be kicked or punched, it would just go right into me. I need a little bit of space so that I can deflect it. And if I have too much space, then, it's not actually there to protect me. So I want it to have a comfortable distance away. And then this is the name of the move, brush knee. I know, thigh. But as you come forward, the hand comes across. So it's making this sort of a shape, and it's crucial that the hand come down to protect the groin before you shift. If I have something vague happening here and my hand it's dropped a little, but it hasn't really dropped to the protect the groin place, then when I shift, I'm going to do this, and it's going to have a downward feeling. And that's not the same motion. If you think of something that, say somebody's going to kick at me or something, I want this hand to be able to deflect anything incoming, and that means it has to already be down there. So that's why it wants to drop to protect the groin before you start shifting. So that's a lot of stuff about two hands. Let's just do a little bit of the marching and see. We can pay attention to one hand and then we can pay attention to the other hand and see how they work. So let's give it a shot. So left foot forward, right hand high, in your 70-30, and go. You know all the bits. We've just been working on this. Last week we worked on this. This moment here is your setup. Make sure your bottom hand has dropped and your top hand is folded over, and then you shift and turn. Other side. Get yourself to this place. Release. Everything comes in, and you come forward. So this time, let's pay attention to the folding arm. As you sink and step, the arm folds over, and look at where it's going to be parallel to your chest, and the fingers are pointing out toward the center of where you're going. Other side. Coming up. It folds in, parallel to my chest, fingers pointing out where I'm headed, and continue. Let's do the top arm again. Goes out and sink. Folds in and then comes back out. The other side one more time. Shift, release. Hand folds and comes forward. So a couple things about that. One is that take a look at how the elbow works. So I've come up, and if I just fold my arm, notice that tends to not engage my elbow. And now my elbow's already hanging down, and when it's time to shift, I'm just kind of bringing up my forearm across. I want to have the elbow kind of goes out a little bit. It's a little from here where you've got more of a straight line. Part of what folds it is that the elbow, it's not that I'm poking my elbow out, but that's how the arm repositions itself to bring the hand in. So I could fold it like that, where the elbow droops, or I can fold it in a way that sends the elbow out a little bit. That's what I want, is the elbow goes out a little bit and there's a little loft in the arm. And then at that point, when I get myself to here and I'm ready to shift, I'm out here, and now it drops and comes out. It's not that from the start, my arm folds, my elbow hangs, and then I just push the whole arm forward. So it's got this playing out feeling of riding with me, and dropping down to the elbow and coming out the hand. So the whole arm is folding and unfolding as it goes through all of this. Let's do it again. So, begin. Elbow stays aloft, then it drops. Elbow stays aloft. And this time, let's do the other thing so that you feel the difference. Your arm goes out, and now just fold your arm in and let that elbow hang, and notice what you have to do to get to the final posture. Come out and bring everything in, let the elbow hang. And when that happens, notice where your fingers are going. You can back up and take a look at that another time. Notice where your fingers go. So, sitting into the back, shifting, and elbows aloft, and look at where your body is, look at where your fingers are. They're pointing to where you're headed. As opposed to, or, and
I'm lining up with your shoulder there.
yeah, so Lee's saying he's lining up with the shoulder because that's where the arm unfolds to when you finish. The final posture has this kind of a relationship. And so I need to be aiming for where it needs to end up. If I come from a place where I just fold it over out here and I think, well, I'm going straight ahead, so I'm going to point my finger out there. Well, then what happens is either I end up with my arm out there, or I know that my arm wants to end up in front of my shoulder, and so as I shift, I just put it in the right place. This way, if you get it lined up, it will just follow your motion and end up where you want it to be. That's part of why you have to make sure that the waist has not turned back to the front or even partially back to the front yet, because if you do that, you're going to end up where, now it's pointing over there. The only way I'm going to end up with my hand in front of my shoulder is if I just stick it there. So we're always looking for setting up the body so that movement moves through it all and leads you to where you're aiming to. So this is a good key to know if you're aiming where you want it to end up, which is in front of your shoulder. So let's do it again and take a look at what happens. The elbow stays aloft, the hand folds, the body turns toward it, and now the fingers are aiming where they're going, and the whole arm unfolds around that. Other side. Arm comes out. As you release, the elbow stays aloft, the hand folds, the fingers are pointing toward where the front of your shoulder is going to be. And the motion plays out through your arm. It's not just a block here. It unfolds. So at this point, the arm is long, you sink, and the elbow goes out, the fingers are pointing diagonally, and as you move through the posture, the whole arm unfolds around this point so that you have it in front of the shoulder. Once more. And go. Other side. So letting it move through the arm. It doesn't just fold and then you put it somewhere. Let it unfold. Now let's take a look at the bottom arm. Do another round. This time we'll use both hands, but we'll bring our awareness just to the hand that is on the inside. First, it's dropping part way. That's the compression. As you sink, it comes down to protect the groin. As you shift and turn, it's going to come across your thigh and end up beside it. It's coming across, it's brushing over your leg. And you know, Ben would always really try to do this super low so that he would brush his knee. But I don't want anybody to distort. It doesn't matter. Your knee is just there under your thigh. Get the hand to make this shape across the thigh because the waist is turning. Another round of it. Hand is down, protecting your groin, palm facing the body. As you shift, it comes alongside and lands beside your thigh. Shift, brushing across the thigh. I guess we can try doing it where you don't actually drop the arm all the way so that you see the difference. So you're in brush knee. You get yourself to about here, and now as you sink and step, let the arm just sort of hang out here, but not drop down to protect your groin, and then shift. And notice the shape that that bottom hand takes. Do it on the other side. Your arm doesn't really go down to protect your groin. It's just sort of hanging out somewhere vague. And then as you shift, feel that shape. It's just a falling down as opposed to something that brushes across your thigh because the waist turns, not because your arm moves. When you have it in a vague place and you shift, you have to actually put your hand down. When you get it to protect the groin, all you have to do is shift and turn and let the arm follow the movement of the waist. So let's do another round of that and try to get the good feeling. I'm not going to spend too much time on what we don't want to do. Just get that feeling. And go. Hand begins coming down. You let go and step. Now it's protecting the groin. Shift, and it crosses your thigh. Comes down to protect the groin. Shift. Palm comes across your thigh. Okay, and rest your legs a moment. We'll do one last round of this, just to try to bring everything together. And what I want to say about the tautness and release thing is you might need to make it pretty extreme, where you really feel this whole line, and then you let go and everything comes in. But that's not actually what you're aiming for. You need to kind of turn the volume up a little bit so you can hear it at first. So go ahead and let yourself make kind of extreme motions so that you feel the difference. But over time, just small changes can make things happen. You don't have to go. I'm not doing this marching and really feeling like I'm at this very, very stretched apart place, and then I let go. That's kind of cool to see how it works. But then you want to let smaller actions create the movement. And they will if you find this feeling. So go ahead and look for that big stretchy feeling and how it changes everything to let go of it. But then don't just stop there. Let it become more natural. You don't see Professor or Ben or even us, not that I'm putting us up with them, but we're not going to these big places and then everything goes away and boing, we all spring into a new place. It's got to be more natural and organic. It doesn't feel like you got to go to big places to be able to let go of something. You can feel that happening on a small scale. I mean, your tendons don't change that much, so we're not actually putting a huge change in there. It's really a different way of using the body, and then you'll find how to make it go. So play around with it. Let's do one last round and make it all happen. Nice and easy, and go. Moving away from your hands. Setting up that line of tautness and releasing it. Turning the waist and the hands follow the motion. We'll do one more set of this. And do find yourself at the final posture. Just because we're flowing through it, stop at this last one. You want your waist square. You want to be in a good 70-30. You're holding yourself up in your front leg. Your rear leg is hanging down. Everything's lined up. Your top hand is in front of your shoulder. The bottom hand has come palm down across your thigh and is resting beside your thigh, and everything squares up at the final posture. So, there's some more on the wonderful move of brush knee.